From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
A little church with a big impact.
And this is one thing that kind of holds it together.
We revisit a place of worship celebrating a major milestone. River Reality Check, the latest as drought conditions continue to bring down the mighty Mississippi. Inflation pressure remains, the latest on higher prices we're seeing at the grocery store, the gas pump, and the possible silver lining.
Prices have held solid so far in my mind.
Right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Sticker shock continues at the grocery store with the price of food alone climbing more than 15% this year. That's according to new numbers released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And in just 1 year, from September of last year to this past September, food prices have increased more than 11%. You can see this on this graphic in blue. And as you can see, that's not the only place we're continuing to see the impact of inflation. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us with more.
Clinton, the prices consumers pay for a wide variety of goods and services rose more than expected in September. The Consumer Price Index rose 0.4% last month and was above expectations. In the last 12 months, the CPI has increased 8.2%. Despite the Federal Reserve's recent interest rate hikes, inflation is not cooling as much as expected. This reinforces expectations the Fed will boost its benchmark funds rate another 75 basis points at their November 2nd meeting. However, excluding volatile food and energy prices, core CPI accelerated 0.4% for September and was up 6.6% from a year ago. Now, at least one market analyst thinks that's the silver lining in the report. He says it's based on company earnings and salaries, which are going up, showing economic growth.
While the CPI was high, and it does encourage the Fed to want to hike or at least keep rates stable, I think the underlying aspect is one, folks are making more money, and then two, unemployment rates are low, not just here, but in Europe as well.
That may be a reason even with food inflation persisting, consumers aren't backing off products like beef, which are usually sensitive to a drop in the stock market.
Prices have held solid so far in my mind. So yeah, I would have thought I would have heard more impact than I am now. So I'm pleased with how beef is moving, how it's continuing to move.
For September, beef prices declined 0.1%, but since January 2021, ground beef is up 23% and sirloin steak up 15%. However, competing proteins like eggs are up 98% and chicken breasts up 46% due to avian influenza. And market experts predict food inflation will persist. In fact, higher food and shelter prices are predicted to stick around for a while. And while there's been about a 5% drop in the national average gas price, analysts say that will be short-lived. So the CPI is likely to remain elevated through the end of the year.
All right, thanks, Michelle. The International Energy Agency is warning OPEC's latest move could tip the global economy into a recession. As we told you last week, OPEC voted to cut oil production by the largest amount since the start of the pandemic. It would result in a cut of about 2% of global oil demand. IEA is saying this could be the tipping point for an economy already on the brink, especially when you consider interest rate hikes and inflation. Now, the IEA has cut its forecast for world oil demand growth by more than 20% next year, but it says even with weaker demand, supply cuts are expected to keep prices higher. And this could add to the inflation woes, low water levels on the Mississippi River. USDA's meteorologist Brad Rippey updating us with this graphic. It shows the latest river level at Memphis, now down more than 8.5 feet. That's tied for the 5th lowest value on record. To put that in perspective, that's more than 56 feet below the peak hit back in May of 2011, the second highest crest on record. And check out this picture from Jordan Fife on the river near Vicksburg, Mississippi. He says normally the water would be up to the dock. At least 8 barges have run aground on the river this month due to those low water levels. Some areas of the heartland could really use some rain to help ease those low water levels, but how likely are they to see it? Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joins us with the very latest.
Yeah, that's right, Clinton. And we talk about these lower river levels, and it's because this drought has continued to expand. If you take a look here at this drought monitor, 4 weeks ago, it was extremely dry right through the middle part of the country. But as we slowly move forward in time, you're going to notice that the drought conditions through the middle part of the country into the upper Midwest, places that filter into the Mississippi River, have been really getting dry over the past month. And that has continued, and it looks like it's going to continue at least through next week, as we aren't expecting much rain right through the middle part of the country, and still dealing with extreme to exceptional drought for much of Oklahoma and Kansas and parts of Nevada and California as well. We're also talking about the temperature swings. Fall is here, and we've got the cooler air filtering in. Feels like temperatures tomorrow morning in the upper Midwest in the 30s. Actual temperatures will be in the upper 30s to low 40s, but the wind is what will get you. And then you can really see the cooler air falling down through up the upper Midwest, northern plains as well. Some warmth sticking around, 80s and 90s, really through the Mid-South and towards the Gulf Coast, heading through the end of the week and the beginning of the weekend. And when you see something like this, you know you got to take a picture. Tyler Ramoser of Southeast Iowa capturing this during harvest. He's calling it a once-in-a-lifetime shot, capturing a double rainbow. That is pretty impressive. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
All right, thanks, Matt. We're following a developing story. Reports one of the largest supermarket operators in the country may be looking to get even bigger. Bloomberg reporting Kroger may acquire Albertsons. Now, Kroger currently has more than 2,700 stores across the country. Albertsons has 2,250 stores. Bloomberg cited unnamed sources that a deal could be announced this week. Reuters reports the combined company would have a market valuation of about $47 billion. It would be one of the biggest mergers in recent years in retail. Shares of Albertsons rose 7% on the news yesterday on Wall Street, while Kroger's stock lost some ground. Russia is hinting it may pull out of the Black Sea grain deal if its demands aren't met. Reuters tracking this, as well as saying Russia has submitted its concerns about the deal to the United Nations. Moscow is complaining it's still facing difficulty selling fertilizer and food. The agreement was brokered in July between Ukraine and Russia with the help from the UN. It allowed Ukraine to resume grain shipments from the Black Sea ports that had been shut since Russia's invasion of the country. So far, 325 voyages have carried more than 7 million metric tons of grains and other food from those ports. 6 of those journeys have included food shipments on behalf of the World Food Program to places such as Ethiopia, Yemen, and Afghanistan. UN officials are expected in Moscow on Sunday to discuss the deal. Wheat prices find a reason to rally on that fresh uncertainty about the Russia-Ukraine grain deal. We'll have details next in markets. And later, this country church in New Mexico is celebrating 100 years of serving its community. Today in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Farm Shop MFG. Did you know that 20% of stored corn is often overventilated by 3 points of moisture? On 100,000 bushels, that's a whole semi-load. Stop this problem for less with the End Zone for Corn from Farm Shop MFG. Specially priced at $1,800 per unit while supplies last.
Grain markets reversed course on Thursday while livestock faced pressure. AgDay's Michelle Rook is back with today's Market Now report.
Markets in the grains closed mixed on Thursday. That was after a lower opening. Mike Zuzalo joins us with Global Commodity Analytics, and wheat and corn turning higher on the day, and some of that was tied to news that Russia maybe wants to back out of this export deal, huh?
Yeah, that was a big deal because Russia is now saying that they need some new demands to be met in order to renew that contract, that deal. And it's interesting, Michelle, because over in the natural gas market, Russia is also making a move saying that they want to use Turkey as their hub for the Middle East and for North Africa. I would not be surprised to see them recommend and want to use the Turkish areas and ports for wheat as well. And I think that the NATO countries that Turkey is part of are going to have a tough time with that. So I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to get this grain deal renewed. And last I looked, or last I heard, we were upwards of 90 vessels that were still waiting to be inspected anyway, coming out of the Ukrainian ports. So it has not been what has been billed to be. And I think the market had to come back in and put that Ukrainian premium back in that they'd taken out before the report.
Yeah, and we're so headline driven in both corn and wheat as a result of that. Let's also talk about the other thing that kind of turned the markets. We had the CPI come out. It was bearish, but yet we had a big reversal in the stock market and the dollar was sharply lower.
Yeah, new weekly highs initially in the dollar spot index, and then new weekly lows as we got into the midday. Whenever I see something like that, it's been a volatile trade the last 3 or 4 weeks, obviously, but this week has been just as volatile, if not more volatile. And whenever I see that, with the Department of Energy giving out their winter outlook and having a seminar on that, I wonder if there's not something going on with the crude oil dollar spread, or whether we're getting close to a kind of a global intervention by the world central banks. I say that because we hit a new 32-year high against the Japanese yen, and I think we hit a new 28-year high against the South African rand. There's been a lot of press out there about how unhappy these emerging markets are, obviously because of the strong dollar and their inflation that we're pumping over to them. I think this is something to really keep an eye on. If we do have that intervention, that'll be like 1985, where the dollar just plummeted after that. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, it will have an impact on the commodities, that's for sure. Thanks so much for joining us, Mike. Mike Zuzalo joining us with Global Commodity Analytics, and more AgDay coming up.
Meteorologist Matt Yarosavik joining us here, taking a look at the drought monitor, and of course we continue to see this expand a little bit. What's the read on how this is changing?
Yeah, through the middle of the country continues to get worse, still extreme to exceptional drought, but it's even starting to expand into the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, and even parts of the Southeast. And you can see that drought expanding to the east here in this graphic, really showing things drying out in the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley. And that's what's creating the lower river levels there along the Mississippi. It's going to continue to get drier over the next week or week and a half, as we're not expecting too much rain through the middle part of the country. We'll see some showers in the upper Midwest and along the south and back in the Southwest, but not much going on right where we need it the most, obviously here during harvest season as well. We've also, behind that front, have some gusty winds along with those drier conditions, creating that elevated fire danger central parts of Kansas through parts of Colorado back into Wyoming and Nebraska as well. Oklahoma City in an elevated fire danger for today as well. Now, again, not a whole lot of rain expected, not through the middle part of the country, through parts of the Mid-South there. Texas will see some next week, and then we've got more systems kind of moving through really southern Canada, but some of that will move into the Great Lakes. We'll be seeing some lake-enhanced rain and maybe even some rain and snow showers into the early part of next week. So here's a look at our national map. High pressure in control of most of the country. Got a couple of systems up here. The cold front moving off the east coast, and then another system bringing a reinforcing shot of chilly air into the northern plains and the upper Midwest. It could bring some snowflakes in northern Minnesota and Wisconsin, but the cooler air continues to filter on through. That'll create some lake-enhanced rain showers. Rest of the country pretty dry and quiet. Not too much going on there, but you can see how that cooler air really starts to filter in. West winds will create more cloud cover in the upper Midwest, and it'll remain that way as we head through the weekend. Temperatures on the cooler side in the upper Midwest, warmer down in the south, and we're going to continue to see the cooler air kind of move towards the east coast as those temperatures will really start to kind of go down with this battle of warm air to the south and cool air to the north. And we'll continue to track that right here on Ag Day. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Huntsville, Alabama, sunny and mild, a high near 76 degrees. Heading to Hayward, Wisconsin, rain and snow showers possible, a high of 39 degrees. And then Cutbank, Montana, mostly sunny, a high near 68 degrees.
It will be up to voters as to whether a $500 million pork processing plant should be built in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We've been keeping you updated on this project. Now, the ballot question before voters in November would, if passed, ban the construction and operation of new slaughterhouses within the city limits. That would bring an end to Holstone Farms planned to build in the city. In addition, Holstone planned to operate a butcher shop in Sioux Falls. Now, in September, a group of residents opposed to new slaughterhouses in the city filed a civil complaint against the company. asking the court to deny the company any permits. Now, a judge's ruling will revoke all Holstone's permits approved by the city until after the vote. Holstone has said the project is important for local agriculture, with its pig supply mostly coming from farmers that live within 75 miles of the city. Romania is confirming an outbreak of African swine fever in its borders. It says the outbreak happened at a large pig farm in the western part of the country. It reports 39,000 animals will be culled. Coming up, a little church with something big to celebrate. How it's become the heart of one tiny community in rural America. Next in the country. A few years back, I shot a story about the small country church my mother and grandparents attended in Forest, New Mexico. This weekend, it celebrates its 100th year in service. And as you'll see, it's a place of community, of fellowship, and worship, miles from the nearest town or store.
You don't stumble across Forest, New Mexico by chance. Once you get there, you realize whoever named it Forest had a sense of humor. Today, there's not much there. A couple of fire trucks, remnants of the old school, and the Forest Community Church.
Modern technology hasn't hit us very hard. We don't have your computer programmed singing, and we don't have a computerized piano. Everything's old that's here. The floors are bare wooden floors. And I think that's the way God wants it to be right here.
He just about got to that point where he was going to let them go.
Basic and bare, yet capable of cultivating the heart of a community.
When you come in, you're going to talk to your neighbors and you're going to talk about what's going on and how did the ball game go last night, and are you having baby calves yet, and how much rain did you get? That's always a big contest. How much rain did you get?
The Forest Missionary Baptist was organized Sunday night, June 11th, 1922.
That's my grandmother, Joy Moon. She's about as close to a historian as we can find. She's been going there since 1945.
Were there a lot of options for church?
What do you mean options?
Well, was there anywhere else you could go, or was Forest about it?
Forest was it.
Back then, Forest was quite the oasis in a sea of prairie grass.
It was a Methodist church, 2 Sundays a month, and it was Baptist church 2 Sundays. But we didn't hardly know who were Methodists and who were Baptists. They all got along pretty well.
Along with a vibrant church, the Forest School kept this community close. Once the doors of the school closed, Forest started to do the same.
We lost our school, and the people that go to school at the different places, they just kind of leave your community. And this is one thing that kind of holds it together.
It is one of those last great hopes, but that's what God gives us, is hope. That's what we're here for, is to cultivate hope in the community.
Current pastor Brian Tabor has been leading this small congregation for the last 3 years. He's not surprised by the longevity.
They stick together through thick and thin, and we've had a really good bunch of people since we've been here, and we've actually added to the group that's here.
We had a little church over in Alma, New Mexico, when we run out of people. It was basically my wife and I and one neighbor left, so we decided to close church over there, and this church over here was more or less kind of what we were used to.
If someone dies in our community, our whole community brings food, and we have a funeral. And if there is a wedding, the whole community comes, and we bring food. We're very good at that.
Jerry Rush was married at this church. She's raised her family here. And like so many others, its foundation is set in her heart. And if you ask her about the future...
Well, I'll be here next week. I just picture keeping it going and letting it serve those who live here. And sometimes there's more and sometimes there's less, but there's always a need to have our church here.
In a town named Forest, on a prairie without trees. It's that kind of optimism that makes even the doubters
I think it's there to stay. I think it's there to stay.
believe.
Now, a couple of things have changed since I first shot that story. There's a new pastor, and my grandmother has since passed, but the church is still going and planning a 100-year celebration this Sunday following services. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Thanks for watching.